Mangwana ni mwalelepo vukenjani great class Vanave Africa. Welcome to Africa Good Morning on the first of the month. This is of course still the show that brings you everything you need to know happening on the African continent and beyond. You are joined by Ashwin Berry and Diana Master. And it's not just the first of the month. We're exactly 1 week from NTV turning 1. I'm excited.
I am excited too. You know what I would be more excited for?
Yes.
What we can win.
Yes, what we can win. And by we mean you. If you scan the QR code in the Agamana Zeitung Republican or Namibian Sun, you stand a chance to win a DSTV Explorer, a dish kit, a GoTV decoder, or a 3,000 Namibian dollar shopping voucher from the Foshini Group. Entries close on the 6th of February. Celebration is exactly a week from now on the 8th of February. And by all means, you should join us.
Now let's get into what you can expect in today's broadcast. A former President Ian Khama says he's open to reconciliation with Botswana President. UK vows to deport foreign criminals under slavery overhaul. And a Horn of Africa drought drives 22 million to hunger. We'll also be chatting to Ari Hochad in South Africa as he updates us on the news on the ground there in South Africa. Do stay tuned.
Former President Ian Khama of Botswana says he is ready to dispatch his younger brother Tshisekedi Khama to meet with representatives of President Mokgweetsi Masisi in their latest attempt at reconciliation. Khama, who has been in self-imposed exile in South Africa since November 2021, said he was taking this avenue after receiving information from numerous sources that Masisi had publicly spoken about wanting to sit down with him. He said previous attempts at reconciliation had failed. Since leaving Botswana and living in exile in South Africa, Khama has traveled across Africa and has been to the United Kingdom on 2 occasions. His planned envoy, Tshisekedi, is the member of the Parliament of Serowe for the opposition of Botswana Patriotic Front, which was formed in July 2019 by disgruntled members of the ruling Botswana Democratic Party, who broke away because of the rift between Masisi and Khama. Khama is facing 14 charges ranging from unlawful possession of firearms to money laundering, and an arrest warrant was issued for him in late December. 2 weeks ago, he tried to have the charges thrown out in the High Court in Gaborone, but the court upheld it and said Khama's appearance in court was an urgent matter.
Now the UK vows to deport foreign criminals under slavery overhaul. Britain's government on Monday enacted new measures to accelerate the deportation of foreign criminals, clamping down on some who have claimed protection under UK law as purported victims of modern slavery. It cited the case as one convicted rapist who appealed against a decision by the Home Office to expel him from Britain by claiming he was a victim of criminal gangs engaged in human trafficking. He was bailed pending the appeal, committed another rape, and remains in the UK. The Home Office has said it is totally unfair that genuine victims of modern slavery may be left waiting longer to receive the protections they need due to the flagrant abuse of the system, Home Secretary Swela Braverman said in a statement. The changes coming into force will mean if you've committed an offence, we have the power to refuse your protections and kick you out of our country, she said. The measures taking effect under a new Nationality and Borders Act mean that Home Office caseworkers can in future demand evidence of modern slavery rather than taking a victim's word. That could include evidence from a charity worker or police officer who has helped rescue the victim.
Now, conflict in Niger leaves children in limbo after fleeing the jihadists who threatened their remote village. Aihata Hassan had no idea that another mighty challenge lay ahead, proving to the authorities that her 12-year-old daughter Nadia existed. Like countless other children in Niger, Nadia has no birth certificate, which meant that she could not enroll in secondary school. Where I am now, I just don't have the money. Since last year, I was told my daughter can't go to college if she does not have the document, but I do not have the money. Now, some villages have no official records of births, and the lack of a certificate becomes all the more problematic for families who are displaced. Today, an identity card is required to enroll in a school. According to Idrissa Iliassou, education advisor for the Sakoira school, many children do not have a birth certificate. In Niger, with half the population under the age of 15, 4 out of 10 children are not registered at birth due to a lack of state infrastructure, old habits, or simply a lack of knowledge of the law.
Now getting into our next story, Horn of Africa drought drives 22 million to hunger. Excuse me. From southern Ethiopia to northern Kenya and Somalia, around 22 million people are at risk of hunger as the worst drought in 4 decades grips the Horn of Africa. In the afflicted areas, inhabitants who eke out a living mainly from herding and subsistence farming are experiencing their 5th consecutive poor rainy season since the end of 2020. The United Nations says 12 million people in Ethiopia, 5.6 million in Somalia, and 4.3 million in Kenya are acutely food insecure. The overall figure has almost doubled from 13 million at the start of 2022, the UN's World Food Programme said in a January 23 report. Across the region, 1.7 million people have been driven from their homes by a lack of water and pasture, it said. The Horn of Africa is one of the regions most vulnerable to climate change, and extreme weather events are occurring with increased frequency and intensity. Since 2016, 8 of the 13 rainy seasons have seen below average rainfall, according to data from the US-based Climate Hazard Center. The last famine was declared in Somalia in 2011 when 260,000 people, half of them children under the age of 6, died of hunger, partly because the international community did not act fast enough, according to the UN. At the time, the region had encountered 2 poor rainy seasons compared to the 5 in the current drought.
Now, Namibia has recorded a record level of rhino poaching. The number of endangered rhinos poached in Namibia last year was the highest on record and almost twice as many as the year before, officials say. A total of 87 rhinos were killed compared with 45 in 2021, official government data shows. Most were poached in Etosha, Namibia's biggest national park, officials say. Rhino numbers in Africa have dropped significantly in recent decades to feed demand for rhino horns in China and Vietnam. Poachers killed 61 black and 26 white rhinos, mainly in Etosha, where 46 rhinos were found dead. Ministry of Environment, Forestry and Tourism spokesperson Romeo Muyunda said, "We note this with serious concern that our flagship park, Etosha National Park, is a poaching hotspot," Mr. Muyunda said. International criminal gangs now use sophisticated equipment to track and tranquilize the animals before hacking off the horn, leaving them bleeding to death. Poaching in South Africa and Botswana has led to wildlife teams sawing off the rhino horns in order to keep them alive. For many generations, rhino horn has been used in traditional Chinese medicine, despite there being no proven medical benefit. Poaching is also being fueled by demand in Vietnam, where horns are displayed as a sign of wealth. The most endangered is the black rhino, with just over 5,000 still alive. However, elephant poaching in Namibia has declined from a high of 101 in 2015 to 4 last year.
Now bringing us to the end of our top stories, Kenya's government has launched a police unit to protect its water resources against vandalism and terrorism. Kenya's Interior Secretary Kithure Kindiki said that all critical water infrastructure would now be under the protection of the Critical Infrastructure Police Unit. Making the announcement, Professor Kindiki said that there had been attempts to access this infrastructure by criminals for economic reasons and quote-unquote to attack our country's security. In recent years, Kenya has faced constant attack and threats of attack, especially from the Al-Qaeda-linked group Al-Shabaab, whose raids on schools, public places and public transport have killed hundreds of people. Additionally, Kenya's critical infrastructure, which includes water reservoirs like forests and dams, has been the subject of vandalism and illegal occupation by squatters, which the Water Ministry says has been costing the country millions of dollars annually. Paul Rono, the Principal Secretary in the Ministry of Water and Sanitation, said that Kenya intended to build close to 100 huge dams and more than 1,000 smaller ones in the coming years. There is need to make sure that this infrastructure is protected against vandalism, destruction and damage, Mr. Rono said.
That brings us to the end of our top stories on Africa. Good morning. Now, there's a lot going on in South Africa, including the return of stage 6 load shedding. Ari Hochart shall be enlightening us on that, no pun intended. See you after the break.
Now, stage 6 load shedding returned to South Africa as 6th generation units suffered breakdowns the last 24 hours. Here to enlighten us on the situation, Ari Hogad.
Yes, Mary, very good morning, Diana, and everybody. Yes, indeed, stage 6 was announced. That's something South Africans getting used to now. It's either 6 or 2. I walked into, I was away for a while and walked into a dark house last night, and that's just the reality. That is Minister Manteshe. There's lots of statements made by ANC, brave statements, saying that load shedding can be addressed within the next 6 months to 12 months. Also, Minister Fikile and Balula outlined quite a few steps for the ANC and for government to address this. What's happening on the ground at the moment, there's talk of a national state of disaster that is being discussed at high levels. That might happen for the first time. Everybody knows about COVID-19 in 2020. It might happen again. Government hope that that will help address the situation. They're also busy, the presidency is putting pressure on all the ministers related to Eskom for procurement and regulatory obstacles to be taken away or to address that. That's all got to do for grid capacity. So they talk about renewable energies or renewable power, boats, etc. There's also to curb outward migration of technical and management skills. There's lots of things they talk about. The reality at the moment is, unfortunately, stage 6. At least there is urgency, but the big news out of South Africa is that we're looking at a national state of disaster that might be can be announced within the next few days or weeks.
All right, now it seems like the economic woes of South Africa keep piling on because diesel and petrol prices are about to go up. Could you tell us about that and how South Africans will need to adjust their budgets?
Yes, it's a continuous budget. It's not only putting in your petrol at the petrol station, it's about the knock-on effect on the cost of goods. So it's not a big increase. It's 28 cents for petrol and 9 for diesel, but it's going up again. It's related to mostly for Brent crude oil that rose that is in the time that it was documented, and it was also the rand that strengthened a little bit. It's currently 17 rand and 40 cents to the dollar, but South Africans under pressure. It will cost you 21 rand and 68 cents for a litre of petrol now in Johannesburg.
So it seems South Africans are going through a lot with Eskom and now with water shortages as some reservoirs are at 0% storage. What is the issue there, Ari?
Yeah, it's happened before. Happened before the December holidays as well, and that is one of the reservoirs in Johannesburg. Many of them are unfortunately at 0% capacity. Many of them between just 1% and 50%. So it is mostly the high-lying ground, and that's got to do with Eskom. Obviously, if there's no power, they can't get the water up to higher-lying grounds, and it's predominantly high-lying areas. It is also a problem in Cape Town all of a sudden. Statements made by the DA, the ruling body, I can say, in Cape Town, that also said at the moment Cape Townians use 949 million litres a day. 949 million litres a day. It needs to be 850 litres a day. Also, dams losing 2% capacity daily. Dams in Cape Town and surrounding areas are still fine, but the rain season is in the winter times. But it is a challenge. There was a heat wave also in Johannesburg, but it's mainly for the reason is Eskom.
All right, now one of South Africa's premier tertiary academic hospitals celebrated 85 years of existence. Please get into that.
Yes, Ashwin, yes. We need to have a positive story as well. People doing a great job at Groote Schuur Hospital, and that is since 1938. It's a heritage site, actually. It's been declared a heritage site in 1986. But there's 500 doctors there, more than 500 doctors, almost 2,000 nurses. So also known, that's a picture from 1976. It was in the news big time in 1967. And that was because it was the first human heart transplant was done by Dr. Chris Barnard in 1967. So that is him there with his patient in 1967. So happy birthday to Groote Schuur, and he's also the chief academic institute at the University of Cape Town. So very key hospital for South Africa, but happy birthday to them.
All right, lots of history indeed. Thank you very much, Ari, for bringing us the stories as they are from South Africa.
Yes, indeed, and we'll stay positive. We'll fight this and we'll beat this. And happy day to everyone.
Happy day indeed. South Africa is known for its resilience. Stay with Africa. Good morning as we head into the weather predictions. Heading into economic news, investors in CRDB Bank PLC must be gazing at the month of May with a lot of enthusiasm as the leader reports a massive rise in net profit, translating into more money coming into their pockets in the form of dividends. Basically, CRDB shareholders' annual general meetings are held in May in Arusha, where they approve, among other things, their dividends. This time around, the amount to be shared will rise thanks to 31% increase in net profits for the calendar year 2022. The Dar es Salaam Stock Exchange listed lender registered a record net profit of 353 billion shilling in 2022, up from 268 billion shilling in 2021. Now, in what explains the quality of CRDB Bank loans, the lender also reported the ratio of its non-performing loans to total gross loans at 2.8% in December 2022.
Now, the United States stops granting export licenses for China's Huawei, according to sources. The Biden administration has stopped approving licenses for U.S. companies to export most items to China's Huawei, according to 3 people familiar with the matter. Huawei has faced U.S. export restrictions around items for 5G and other technologies for several years, but officials in the U.S. Department of Commerce have granted licenses for some American firms to sell certain goods and technologies to the company. Qualcomm Incorporated in 2020 received permission to sell 4G smartphone chips to Huawei. A Commerce Department spokesperson said officials continually assess our policies and regulations, but do not comment on talks with specific countries. Huawei and Qualcomm declined to comment. Bloomberg and the Financial Times earlier reported the move.
The 5G race continues. Stay with Africa. Good morning as we head into sports. There's nothing better than being able to talk about a legend as Farah returns for London Marathon before likely 2023 retirement. Britain's 4-time Olympic champion Mo Farah said on Tuesday he expects 2023 to be the final year of his career after confirming he will give his home London Marathon one more shot in April. Farah, who withdrew from last year's event due to injury, has run the London Marathon 3 times with a best finish of 3rd in 2018, the same year he won the Chicago Marathon. "I'm not going to go to the Olympics, and I think 2023 will probably be my last year," said Farah, who turns 40 in March. "It has been an amazing career, and for me to take part in London Marathon is a big deal." Farah will be joined by reigning Commonwealth Games 10,000 meters champion Ailish McColgan, who also withdrew ahead of her debut last year due to a medical issue. The 32-year-old is the daughter of the 1996 winner Liz McColgan.
Now, Australian Open sets a Grand Slam record attendance. The Australian Open set a Grand Slam attendance record with more than 900,000 spectators visiting over 3 weeks, organisers said on Tuesday, despite the absence of some big-name players and scheduled disruptions due to rain. A record 839,192 fans flocked to Melbourne Park from January 16 to 29 for the first tournament in 2 years, free of COVID-19 restrictions, beating the previous mark of 812,174 people set in January 2020. The figures eclipsed last year's attendance numbers at other Grand Slam main draws. 515,164 visited Wimbledon, 613,500 were at the French Open, and 776,120 went to the US Open. Over 60,000 also watched the qualifying events in Melbourne, bringing the total up to 902,312. The tournament missing the retired Serena Williams, Roger Federer, and last year's homegrown champion Ash Barty broke its single-day attendance mark with 94,854 fans visiting on January 21st. The previous record was 93,709, set in 2020. It was reported that we didn't have the greats anymore, that it was going to be terrible, but people just want to be entertained. Tennis Australia Chief Executive Craig Tilley told the Melbourne Age.
You know, I'd love to see an African Grand Slam. If you're listening and you can make that happen, let's do it. Right, Live Golf announces 2023 schedule with 14 events in 7 countries. Live Golf's 2023 schedule will have 14 events set to be played in 7 countries with $405 million in prize purses. The Breakaway Tour announced on Monday, doubling the number of events from its inaugural season last year. The season begins with the February 24 to 26 event in Mexico's Riviera Maya and ends with the Team Championship in the first week of November in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. Other events will take place in the United States, Australia, Singapore, Spain, and the United Kingdom. The 2022 season had events held in London, Portland, Bedminster, Boston, Chicago, Bangkok, and Jeddah. Last year helped lay the foundation for the future of golf at extraordinary courses that have hosted some of the world's competitions, Live Golf CEO and Commissioner Greg Norman said in a statement.
Now, the transfer window is officially closed, and we know that Chelsea have been bidding for Enzo Fernandez. Chelsea have bid 120 million euros for Benfica's Argentina midfielder Enzo Fernandez in a move that would make him the British transfer record signing. So far, there's no indication, correction, the indication is that the Blues' offer has been accepted. If the deal goes through, it would eclipse the 100 million Manchester City paid for Aston Villa for Jack Grealish in 2021. Fernandez was named Young Player of the Tournament during Argentina's World Cup triumph in Qatar. Benfica have previously accused Chelsea of trying to unsettle the midfielder, with Portuguese side's manager Roger Schmidt declaring their pursuit.
Hey, I'm just happy that Arsenal managed to sign someone from Chelsea before they started that whole mess.
But the Blues have had a brilliant spending spree this transfer season.
Yes, of course. It's wonderful, and it's working for them right at 10th position in the Premier League. Thank you for staying with Africa Good Morning. Highlights after the break.
We've reached the end of our program, but before we sign off, let's take a look at the highlights. Former President Ian Khama says he's open to reconciliation with Botswana. UK vows to deport foreign criminals under slavery overhaul. Conflict in Niger leaves children in limbo. US stops granting export licenses for China's Huawei, and this is according to sources.
That brings us to the end of our stories, and remember, NTV turns 1 next year. We're interested to know what your favorite moments on NTV have been. Do let us know, and we might just share them on the show. But from Diana Master and Ashton Berry, the repeat is at 8:30. You can always catch Africa Good Morning from 7:30 a.m. on DSTV 285, GoTV 94. Until tomorrow, Surya Jaganak.